Hi, listeners, and welcome back to The Good Pod. Today, I have the pleasure of sitting down with the leader who is truly at the heart of our community, John Bost, the Executive Director of Open Heart Kitchen. If you live in the Tri-Valley, you know the incredible work OHK does. From hot meals to the Open Heart Refuge, they are a lifeline for so many in our community. Here at the Village, we are especially grateful because they provide delicious hot meals to our neighbors 3 days every week. John is not only a visionary leader, but an incredible storyteller. John, we are so glad to have you here, and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jackie. It's so great to finally be here, and it's an honor just to be invited to be part of this great podcast.
Thank you. Well, John, you have a background as a pastor, and that often involves feeding the soul. So what would you say that called you to shift into leading an organization that feeds the community?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you have to kind of go back before the church days, the pastor days. My first love has always been social work, so I'm a social worker at heart and by training. So even before I went to seminary, my first quote-unquote real job was as a Child Protective Services investigator in Concord, North Carolina. It's Concord out here, Concord in North Carolina. And so one of the beautiful pieces of being a pastor is I don't ever felt like I had to hang up my social worker hat. I don't think I ever stopped being a social worker, even when I was a pastor. I think my training as a social worker informed everything that I did as a pastor. I think what's been really interesting for me in this kind of transition, which is now 4 years away from being a pastor, has been what feels more direct service. As a pastor at Holy Cross Lutheran Church here in Livermore, I'm so proud of our track record for outreach and all the things that we did to engage the community locally and globally. But I also felt like I was sometimes like one spot removed from the direct service piece. And so being in this executive director role has really kind of returned me back to that first love of connected to seeing the changes and the impacts that we can make on people's lives pretty quickly. I mean, food is a pretty quick turnaround. It's quick feedback. Someone's hungry, they eat, get a great nutritious meal at Open Heart Kitchen, they're no longer hungry. It'll rinse and repeat tomorrow, right? Where I was trying to get ahead of that. But as a pastor, I felt like sometimes the gratification of seeing the impact was much more delayed and much more planting seeds. And so it's been really cool being in this role to get more of that quick feedback. So it feels a little less abstract and a little more concrete, which is always nice.
Yeah, it's really nice to see the fruits of your labor real time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's amazing that you said you were in a pastor role, but you never really stopped being a social worker. And that just makes it so beautiful and really kind of speaks to how you operate in both of those positions.
Yeah, absolutely. And no one told me in seminary that, being a pastor also meant being an attorney, a HR specialist, a strategic planner, a bookkeeper, all these other things. But yeah, at the heart, this idea of walking alongside people never stopped. So that started very early on for me as a human being and carried that over into college and then seminary and as a social worker and then ultimately as a pastor who never felt like he stopped serving. So I don't feel like this was a huge abrupt shift for me moving from being a pastor for almost 30 years to now moving into an executive director role. I will say, I had hoped there'd be more direct service, and there was early on, and now it's much like being a pastor. I'm always trying to equip others to serve, and so I feel sometimes 1 or 2 steps removed from the direct service. So I really have to just sometimes get up from my chair, get away from the computer, go and be with the folks that we're serving and partnering with, and just to be, not because I need to be reminded. I get a pretty strong internal moral compass and get where I'm going, but just to have conversations, to get to know the people, to hear those struggles and those stories and those successes, and the impact is really it feeds me too. I also want to be fed in this work. Yeah,
amazing. And so when I was perusing your website, as I do research before we do these episodes, there was a very powerful promise on there that says, Regardless of what's happening in the world or with the government, no one should ever have to doubt where their next meal is coming from. So how do you and your team manage to be so steady even in the midst of everything that's going on in the world? Because I remember talking to your staff members during that time when we weren't sure if our neighbors' food stamps were going to get cut off or how we were going to get food into the village. And they were so calm, and we kind of commiserated a little bit and said, we don't know what's going on, but we're going to try our best to be there for you. And that just made me feel peaceful, even in that phone call.
Yeah, I mean, no one wants to be in those situations where we're having to make proclamations like that, no matter what happens with the government shutdown, this one or future ones, or losses in SNAP or WIC or CalWorks or any number of programs that people rely on, not just in emergency situations, but just to exist these days. No one wants to have to make those proclamations. But I also think for Open Heart Kitchen, one of the things that's been really important to us as a part of our culture is wanting to be one of many organizations that are built to stand up in moments. It's precisely for moments like those, right? As I said, no one wants to see those show up on our radar. No one wants to have to anticipate those, but planning, strategizing, thinking systematically about how we can weather those types of crises and storms is a really important part of, I think, how we think about ourselves as an organization. And then all the other times, we just want to be a steady presence in people's lives. For all the lifts that someone is already having to do who's struggling to make ends meet, in my mind, food should just be an automatic, don't worry about this. Open Heart Kitchen and other great organizations in the Tri-Valley have got your back. We've got you covered. So we hope that frees up mental space and capacity to worry about some other things that are maybe more difficult to pin down. But at a minimum, food should not be the thing that individuals and families and seniors and folks are having to worry about. I mean, that this is to say this without even getting into conversations about food being a basic human right, among other things, right? Food should not be controversial. It should not be an incendiary, volatile conversation. It should just be that steady drumbeat in people's lives, wherever they need to turn to have access to it. And not just food, but nutritious food that makes them healthy and is going to help them and their kids have, better outcomes in school and in life and in mental health and all those things that we know when healthy food is not in place, we know the negative adverse effects that folks can experience without it. So I think there's a lot of pride in being able to say, we're here, we've got you. Let's figure out all these other obstacles and challenges, but let's do it on a full stomach.
Exactly. Yeah. And sometimes that'll make or break how the conversation goes, how people's behavior is, people being hungry, people being in chronic pain. Those are two things that'll really change the direction of the conversation that you're trying to have with them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And thank you for saying nutritious food, because oftentimes people think it's a food kitchen or a shelter, or people are quote unquote less than and they just deserve whatever I can give them, regardless of what that looks like. So thank you for saying nutritious food. I think that's important.
Yeah, that's a really important point. I think sometimes the services we provide people are already punishing. Like, cruelty sometimes is the point, I think. And I think we have a bit of this mentality that you should just be happy with whatever you get. Like, if you did all these things wrong, which is the narrative we tell ourselves in this country, that moral failure or personal failure are the primary drivers of why someone is struggling and need to, and God forbid, have human needs, right? That's a conversation for another day. Then there's this sense of, like, you should just be happy with whatever you get. Hang out on the floor at the end of the table and be happy with whatever scraps are thrown your way, right? Never mind what you're eating is going to hurt you. It's going to hurt your kids. Never mind, you live in a place where you don't even have access to fresh, fruits and vegetables, right? Which is a whole other food apartheid conversation as well.
And speaking of mindsets in our community, People often think of the Tri Valley as an affluent area. As someone from the Central Valley, I still sometimes think of the Tri Valley as a relatively affluent area. But your guys' services are in very high demand. Our wait list is triple digits long. All of the nonprofits in this area have a long list of people that are looking to get served. So, can you speak to the hidden hunger in our community and maybe give our listeners some insight into all that's going on as far as that is concerned?
Yeah, I mean, I think this notion of poverty or hunger being hidden is legit. I think that if we try to do these poverty comparisons between what does poverty look like in East Alameda County versus West Alameda County, I don't think Livermore is Hayward. I don't think Pleasanton is Berkeley. These are different places that have different needs, and sometimes it is a question of concentration of poverty. And to try to think that these are the same equivalencies, they're not. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. Having said that, there is real need in the Tri Valley. And as you said, Jackie, if there weren't, why would these numbers be so high, right? And I think part of what's driving that too is gone are the days, and maybe I'm not sure they ever existed, to be honest with you, that the problems we experience in one town are just unique to that town, right? We know the Tri Valley is a region, right? So as goes Livermore, goes Pleasanton, and Dublin, and vice versa. You can even, to some extent, pull in Danville and San Ramon, I think, in these three valleys, right? And then, but it's even broader than that. So if San Jose's city council are making decisions in terms of how people are housed or not housed, and moving away from housing first funds to more temporary, intermittent shelter options, and there's not enough for folks. If the word gets out that there's this place in Livermore or wherever, if people have a need that's not being met and they have a means of transportation, they're going to do what anybody would do, including ourselves. They're going to go to those places and they're going to access those services. A lot of times what happens, we know this, is sometimes those services they thought existed there don't, and then it's easy to get stalled in a particular community. And so I think what we see here in the Tri Valley is we're not just the Tri Valley. We've got folks commuting long distances for work, who are the folks working in our restaurants and making our beds at hotels that don't live here because it's impossible to live here. So we have to think in terms of a regional approach to these things. These are regional problems which require regional solutions. And I think that, oddly enough, as much as we say this or that thing is hidden, being poor has never been hidden to the market. The market has never lost sight. It's of poor folk. It's expensive to be poor. What poor folks have to pay in rent, buy now, pay later schemes that are like exploding, right? Payday loans, fees that set families back in horrible ways where they can never catch up. Like all these things, look at people who are poor and it's like, I can make money off of this person. I don't really care if it puts them deeper into a hole. Like there's money to be made on this individual. And so for those who are looking, it's not so invisible. For those who aren't, it is. But I do think in places like the Tri-Valley, which tend to be more affluent, the cost of living here and making a go of it, if you're just on the edge, there's an even higher price to pay sometimes because the ceiling is so much higher to try to stay here. And I think there's some other hidden things that families are doing that we don't always see, which is I look perfectly fine, but I'm working 3 jobs, which means there's kind of a poverty of time, right? I'm commuting 4 hours a day. I'm working 3 jobs, none of which pay my health insurance. I don't get to see anything that my kids are doing just to try to make rent, right? Just to pay the utilities, just to provide for childcare, all these things that we're not just, we aren't taking pictures of that and putting on our social media, right? Because we know our society looks at that and says, oh, once again, how horrible a person you must be to have needs, right? So don't tell anyone. Suffer in quiet desperation. That's the American way.
And I'm so glad you said being poor is expensive. And it made me think of, I listen to a lot of financial podcasts where there's a lot of predatory loans and credit cards with high interest rates that really prey on people in not so great financial situations. And something that was a temporary blip might turn into like a lifetime of trying to figure out how to get yourself out of that hole. And the intentions were pure from the beginning, and then it turns into something chaotic. So thank you for saying that again. And so you guys mainly focus on food, but you guys also have the Open Heart Refuge, which provides emergency shelter for those with nowhere else to go. So how would you say that adding a place to sleep alongside a place to eat has changed the way you guys support a neighbor's journey into stability?
Yeah, I mean the journey from food or not away from food to shelter, but both was really an interesting story for us. I want to say that we all had the forethought to say, there's this horrible intersection between food insecurity and housing insecurity, and there's a lot of intersections in the work we do in terms of where people are lacking the basic things they need to exist on the planet. For us, it was really thinking about our new role at Vineyard Resource Center, which was to have our first ever kitchen in 30 years after leasing and renting kitchens all over the East Alameda County. We initially thought our role there was going to be primarily food, maybe someone at the front desk to help, direct traffic, answer questions. And at the time when Vineyard was being dreamed up, a previous organization called Livermore Homeless Refuge that I was a part of was going to have a permanent place there. And we were really excited about that. No more having to pack up stuff every 2 weeks and move from church to church and location to location. But over time, the operations of that organization were shifting. A little thing called COVID happened, which kind of flattened everything. And then coming out of that, some things were different. And so thinking about Livermore Homeless Refuge's long-term capacity to be in a place like Vineyard weren't as clear as they once were after all those things. And so when it looked pretty clear that the writing was on the wall that Livermore Homeless Refuge was not going to be in there, there was a conversation about a void and vacuum that was created. And looking around the Tri-Valley, was there anyone that was going to step in and meet that need? There was clearly a need that was here and had been growing in the Tri-Valley. And so that was right about the same time I came on staff at Open Heart Kitchen. And I just, in my heart of hearts, could not imagine letting this opportunity go to continue to find new ways to provide temporary shelter for folks. And so, and thinking about how we welcomed people into the refuge of Livermore Homeless Refuge, and now what is Open Heart Refuge, it seems like a big leap because the level of sophistication and complexity that goes into running a shelter year round, every night, holidays included, rain or shine, all no longer the seasonal inclement weather model of Livermore Homeless Refuge for 30 people is pretty wild. It's a lot. The exposure and liability, the compliance pieces are so sophisticated. It's hard for me to even remember the Livermore Homeless Refuge days. So once again, I wish I could say I had this wonderful visionary crystal ball that says there's this wonderful intersectionality. We can feed people, and then we can turn around and provide shelter for them, and we can add laundry and showers into that, and provide opportunities for other partners to come in to meet with folks, to have this kind of wraparound one-stop facility. Some of that was in place, but this was really, hey, no one is going to step into this void. Clearly looking at the fact that we have 30 people spending the night and a wait list of another 30 people every night, there's clearly a need here. So to try to imagine what it might have been like not to have something like Open Heart Refuge is a scary thought to me. I wish we had more space and capacity. And so now, having those two pieces in place really allows us to think, I think, more holistically in terms of how we provide services for folks, how we walk alongside them, how we help them really take hold of their future. Not we as the keepers and the harbingers of all the answers, but folks that are committed to them. And the moment folks step through the door, we're already for them. right? We don't have to be persuaded to care about what they're going through, and to be there for the long haul, and to connect these really important structural pieces.
Absolutely.
Sometimes in the nonprofit world, we're really good on soft skills, and we feel very passionately about these things, but it's the structural piece, not just leading by emotion, that's absolutely crucial. That creates that consistency for folks, that they can take steps and see those steps, and it's not an easy thing to get out of. You know that, we all know that. Wasn't easy to get into. It's not easy to get out of, but having something that feels secure and stable, I think, is the foundation by which the folks that we serve really can start to think about and dream about their futures again.
Because they finally have a safe space that they know is going to be there for them, rain or shine, day or night.
Yeah.
And you also have a blog called From the Heart, and you share stories from the front lines. We mentioned that you were a storyteller in the beginning, and you have some really nice pieces on there. Is there a particular interaction that has stuck with you or kind of reminded you why you continue to stay in this work?
Yeah, I think there's two really that come to mind. One was pretty early on. This is back when we first opened Vineyard and Open Heart Refuge in January of 2024. One of our first guests at the refuge was an Army vet, and I remember him coming and saying how important having something like Open Heart Refuge was to him, because it felt like his options were between jail, home, living out on the street, or suicide. And he was not wrong, right? He was absolutely spot on, and I had never heard it quite put so plainly, right? Jail, homelessness, suicide, and my heart broke hearing those things, and then just thinking, how we can be part of this long-term trajectory for this young man. And that there was another option in there, which was the refuge, right? So it wasn't just jail, homelessness, or suicide. There was a fourth option, which now had shown up in his life, which was Open Heart Refuge for as long as he needed it, right? To be able to stabilize and get on his feet and be able to take steps forward. So being able to add a fourth option into those three horrible ones was a really eye-opening and gratifying moment to be on the side of partnership with him. The other came towards the end of 2024. Actually, another veteran who had been staying with us and was able to move into permanent supportive housing. And when he did that, in reflecting and recollecting his experience at the refuge, wrote a Christmas letter to us, to our staff, to our volunteers, essentially thanking us for treating him like a human being. Right, because he's felt this stigma that we've put on him as a society for being homeless, which kind of is the scapegoat of all the worst things that can happen to you in America, in the United States, and for him stepping in, it wasn't the grand sort of this or that. It was the simple gestures of, hello, how are you? How was your day? Would you like a glass of water? Would you like something to eat? Can I show you to where you'll be sleeping? All these things that just humanize and dignify people actually do make a huge difference in people's lives. And for all the big sweeping heroic things we think we want to do, it's the tiny in between things that nobody is paying any attention to or watching, except this man was paying attention to them and watching them. And it made him feel human, and it made him feel whole. And it's just a reminder to me, once again, for all the grand visioning that we want to think of, it's those small pieces that add up and make a huge difference in people's lives.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that story. I'll never forget when I first started here on the 24-hour support team, where Kim mentioned some of the neighbors that we're going to be bringing in haven't had someone say their name in a couple weeks, or even make eye contact with them in several weeks. When's the last time they had a hug or a handshake? And so just calling someone by their name, looking them in the eyes, shaking their hand, giving them a hug makes a world of difference. Whew, that was kind of heavy. So before we wrap up, I want to give you an opportunity to let our listeners know how they can get involved with Open Heart Kitchen. If it's donating, if it's actually working in the kitchen, if it's helping out with Open Heart Refuge, what does that look like for our listeners?
Yeah, I was joking with Jackie before we started that this was the one question that I didn't want to just do the go-to, we need more volunteers, we need more money, we need more this, we need more of that. We need all those things, right? Every organization does. But I actually wanted to jot down some ideas just to go a little bit further. And so I came up with another list beyond just the volunteering, donating, subscribing, visiting, all the usual suspects. And so the first one is, in terms of ways to get involved, to use your voice where it actually counts. And so I'm not saying don't use your voice online, but remember, no one wakes up on any given morning of any given day that says, I'm going to go online because I want to be persuaded to think differently. Right. So good luck changing someone's mind online. Don't using your voice where it counts also means don't show up and just make it a performance. Right. These performative changes, being a slacktivist, traveling to another country and taking pictures and coming back and saying how you changed the world. Like none of this stuff changes anything. It doesn't do anything. It makes you feel good, but it doesn't change the matter at hand. So showing up where it really counts is getting in rooms that matter, right? And so whether that's showing up at a school board meeting, whether that's showing up at a city council meeting, asking questions that are hard and uncomfortable, but asking specific questions about topics you clearly have taken the time to research and understand. So whatever the board may be, wherever the room may be, push those boards, push those employers, push those faith communities to actually put their money where their mouths are, right? To align policies with dignity. Another way to get involved is normalize talking about need. I know I've alluded to that a few times in this notion of we have to start whispering when we talk about like a family member or a friend or a neighbor who actually has needs, right? This person's got needs over here, or they've got special needs. Like we all have special needs, right? Every human being's got special needs. So, getting out of, if we say it out loud, we can get out of the shame thing, right? Anything that's wrong with us, if you peel back enough layers, there was a moment where we felt shamed by something. So if we can get around that, that would be stellar. So it's okay to say out loud that people actually need food assistance, right? Might even be you. It's okay to say it out loud. Stop whispering like needing stuff is a moral failure on your part. And be brave and courageous enough when Uncle Frank says something stupid at Thanksgiving, call it out. Like at dinner tables around the United States, call stuff out when you hear it. Be a connector. Be someone that if you know someone's got resources, connect them to organizations that need those resources. And when you are connecting people, don't try to connect them to a spreadsheet, connect them to a story. That will change hearts and minds. And bridge, people who would likely never meet otherwise. Like we're in our echo chambers, our silos in this country pretty profoundly these days. And it's like making us sick and it's killing us, right? This is one of my favorite ones as someone who's about 60% of my job is being a fundraiser now. Unrestricted donations, right? We snap our fingers on that one, right? Clap out loud. Like trust the people doing the work to do the work, right? But don't hold back on advice. Don't hold back on ideas. We want to hear all of that too. Don't just get involved during crisis. Get involved to expand capacity for organizations. And once again, trust the people who are closest to the problem are also the same people best positioned to solve it, right? That's true of folks doing this work. It's even more true of people who are going through it and have lived experience and are facing it every day. Stay when the sexiness is gone. That's what I say. When it's no longer exciting, when the emergencies, quote unquote, have subsided, be consistent, be the first to show up, the last to leave, be there when the headlines are gone. Support during quote unquote boring months. So anything outside November and December, also people have needs. The other 10 months of the year and commit for years, not just for a moment here or there. And then lastly, and this might be the most important to sort of shape and inform the other 5, let this work change you. So be okay with having your assumptions challenged. Be okay with the walls you've built for years coming down so you can build. I don't know that you should build new walls, but build a trampoline instead and jump around on that. Listen more than you explain and be willing to be inconvenienced. And when you hear bullshit, call it out. Like, we're kind of in this country going through this whitewashing moment, like the ultimate gaslighting of what we see, we don't see, and what we hear, we don't hear, and all these things. And be that person who doesn't just sort of see something, say something, but does something. Like, I read somewhere, don't just be a bystander, be an upstander. Like, stand up and do something about it. Get involved. Don't stand on the sidelines. Don't think that someone else is going to do it for you. Right. I was watching a TED video from a horrible thing that happened back in 2013, and the speaker shows a video of a young girl, I think she was 4, in a province in China, who was struck by a car and is stumbling through the streets of this community and eventually collapses. And 6 adults walk past this little girl. And so the speaker of the TED Talk says, raise your hand if you would have stopped and done something. Well, of course, everyone raises their hand, right? They would have not been folks walking by this child who is lying there in the street. And then the speaker pivots to some numbers on UNICEF and just childhood poverty. And he's like, how are these things compatible for you? And, ultimately the message of his story was that compassion is proximate. Like, the closer we are to things that we see or to the problem, we feel more responsible to do something about them. But why does that need to be the case? Why does someone on the other side of the world, are they less deserving of our attention and our outrage than the person that we may or may not walk past on the street, right? Which I guess is a full circle moment when we talk about things being hidden. It's hidden to those who want them to be hidden. For those who are looking, who are vigilant, who are attentive, it's not. Folks aren't invisible. We see them. And the bigger question then is, what are you going to do about it? Yeah.
Makes me think of the bystander effect. We learned about that in school. You see someone going through something and you just keep walking by because that's someone else's problem. Or that has nothing to do with me, so I'll just leave it alone. But those are all amazing points. I hope you all took notes, listeners. So before we let you go, John, we have a segment that we created for you called The Kitchen Table, and it's just an opportunity for our listeners to get to know you a little bit better. So just answer the first thing that comes to mind. What is the one meal that always makes you feel at home?
Spaghetti.
Ooh.
Every day, all day.
Nice. Do you prefer coffee or a strong cup of tea to wake you up?
In theory, I really want to be a tea drinker because it just seems amazing, but it just tastes like brown water, kind of Ted Lasso kind of approach there. So I suppose coffee, reluctantly. Yeah.
But your dream is to be a tea drinker.
My dream is to be a tea drinker one day.
Okay. One day, maybe we can have a conversation about that after. What is one dish you're famous for cooking at home?
It's weird. It goes back to the pasta piece again. I was scrounging for ingredients one time. I think I was making some sort of pasta. My family's like a big pasta family. And I added, the noodles were cooked and I added the sauce. And I had seen somewhere like, just add like a little bit of heavy whipping cream. I did that. My kids lost their mind. They thought this was like the most gourmet meal they'd ever had in their lives. And so I don't think I've told them my secret yet, but it's just a little bit of heavy whipping cream, which it's a game changer. So you should try it.
And if they listen to this now, they'll know.
Kids don't listen to this.
If you could share a meal with any 3 people, who would you invite to the table?
It's just living, dead, anyone, fictional characters.
Anyone you want it to be. 3 people.
Let's go with Malcolm X. I'm a big fan of Stephen Colbert and Bad Bunny.
Ooh, okay. Shout out to the Super Bowl. Last question. In your opinion, what is one ingredient that makes a community truly good?
I think the willingness to, this might be the recurring theme of this podcast, the willingness to look on purpose and then to not look away after you've seen what you've seen, even though it'd be easier to do so.
Nice. And that might tie into our last one.
That's also my definition of being a good neighbor.
I was going to say that ties into the last one. Okay, so finish the sentence. Being a good neighbor means...
Yeah. Realizing that in this life you can either be aware or happy, but you cannot be both. So when you see what you see, do not look away. And more importantly, get involved, do something about it, be engaged. I will say, even though I'm no longer a pastor, one of the stories that connects to that idea that still is near and dear to me is still the story of the Good Samaritan, right? Which, for me, the operative question for our society is: if I stop and help this person who's clearly hurt and needs help, what will happen to me? Right? There's reputation, there's time. I'm on the way somewhere. All these things. Is this person clean? Not clean? I think the question should be: if I don't stop and help this person, what happens to the person? That's a fundamental shift in terms of how we think of ourselves as neighbors, and answering the question, who is my neighbor? Right? And some of our liberation theologian friends have kind of flipped that question on the head, that our neighbor's not the person that we accidentally happen upon. We're going to the grocery store, going to Safeway by 580, and there's someone panhandling. Like, is this person my neighbor or not my neighbor? Our neighbor's the person that we see and that we intentionally place in our path. Like, that's a choice, right? In that respect, love is a choice. It's not a feeling, right? Courage is a choice. It's not a feeling. We can only choose those things if we are engaged and alert and aware, and we want to be part of the solution and not someone that sticks our head in the sand and thinks, as you said, Jackie, that someone else is going to come along and take care of this. Why not you?
Exactly. And especially thinking, if everyone thinks the same way you think, this person's never going to get served, never going to get helped. Do you have any final thoughts to leave our listeners before we let you go?
This has been so much fun. Like, let's do this again next week. It's easy to get cynical these days. I get cynical. I call my cynical monster has a name. It's sinister. That's kind of my combining of those. I try to avoid being overly cynical on that's one ditch that we die in. The other ditch is sentimental, which everything's okay and nothing's wrong. So I guess it's rowing a little bit on the left and a little bit on the right to try to stay on the path, but stay engaged. Stay emotionally connected. I know in these times where for folks for all sorts of reasons feel anxiety, the easiest thing to do is to get detached and disconnected. I think that's our evolutionary biology wants us to sort of do that. But stay in the game, stay in the fight. People are counting on us. We don't need to give voice to the voiceless. Everyone has a voice. We just need to listen, right? So stay in it. You're not out of it. We're not out of it. And people need us to keep showing up.
And take action. John, thank you so much for your leadership and the way that Open Heart Kitchen provides a foundation of security for our community. It is truly an honor to partner with you, and thank you so much for being here today.
Likewise, Jackie. Thank you so much for you and for Hunter and for Kim and the whole Goodness Village team and for the neighbors here at Goodness Village who are doing life, right? It's really cool to see.
And as always, listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to The Good Pod, share this conversation with your community, and stay tuned for more stories. And remember, being a good neighbor isn't about where you live, it's about how you show up. Until next time. Thank you for listening to the Goodness Village podcast. Production and recording was done by the Goodness Village operations team with support from Crosswinds Church. Music was provided by Blue Dot Sessions. If you want to know more about Goodness Village, visit us at gvlivermore.org. Thanks again for listening to The Good Pod.